In today's video, I wanted to explain the most essential tools that I use in 2022. I made a video last year explaining all of my tools. This video, however, is going to go over the most essential tools that I absolutely can't go without. So before we go into all the most essential tools that I use in my artwork, I do quickly want to mention that when it comes to hyperrealism, in my opinion, it makes the most sense to take advantage of the widest range of tools that you have access to. So for example, I personally don't think it is a good idea to only rely on graphite or only rely on charcoal unless that is something that you're strictly passionate about and that's the medium that you want to stick with. But if your goal is to create the most hyper realistic drawings that you possibly can, I do recommend incorporating charcoal and graphite together, because depending on the drawing that you're making, you're not necessarily going to be able to reap all the best benefits from just charcoal or just graphite. All of my drawings, I do incorporate both of these, so I just wanted to get that point out of the way first. Many of the tools that I'm going to talk about in this video I actually purchase on Amazon, and I actually buy my paper on Amazon as well. If you want to help support me and support the channel, I posted the affiliate Amazon links in the description for all the tools that I use, at least the ones that you can find on Amazon. If you purchase any of these tools through these links, I'll get a small commission for referring you to those items. None of these tools are in any particular order. They're all essential, and I will continue to use them in some way or another for almost every drawing that I do in the future. First tool on the list is going to be some form of charcoal pencil, pierre noir, or carbon pencil. Personally, I use General's 6B or 4B charcoal pencils. They work really well. They go on nice and smoothly. I also really like Conte a Paris Pierre Noir. It just goes on so buttery smooth, and it blends really well. Doesn't really leave any streaks or blotchiness. It is really amazing. The reason why this is so essential is because graphite pencils don't go completely black. You need to use some sort of a carbon or a charcoal pencil or the Pierre Noir pencil to achieve the darkest values. If you're relying only on graphite when doing your hyperrealism drawings, you're not going to be able to achieve the darkest values that only charcoal or carbon pencils can get. Graphite is only going to let you get a dark gray at best. Of course, charcoal pencils have some weaknesses as well. They don't sharpen all that well, so they're not going to create very fine lines or fine details or anything like that. It's a lot better for creating solid blocks of tone. So if there's a particular shape that is solid black, you're going to want to create that with a charcoal pencil or the Pierre Noir pencil. Another thing that they're not all that great for is creating gradual shifts in tone. They're a lot better for solid black areas, but you're not going to get a solid gradation that you can with graphite pencils. With graphite pencils, you can very smoothly build up from darkest to lightest in a very gradual manner. So that brings me into the second essential tool when it comes to hyperrealism, is the graphite pencil. This is the quintessential tool for drawing. It is pretty much the most versatile tool that there is. If you had to choose one tool to draw with, I would say graphite pencils all the way. However, like I said before, it's not about using just one tool. It's about relying on the strengths of multiple different tools to achieve whatever effects that you're going for. So the brands that I use for graphite pencils are going to be Staedtler Lumograph, and I occasionally use Faber-Castell 9000 series as well. I think these both go on extremely smooth, and they blend really nicely. When it comes to graphite pencils, I use it mostly for detailing on top of the charcoal powder. I don't use particularly dark grades of graphite usually. I usually stick with 4H to HB. If I need to go darker than that, I'll usually opt to use the Pitt oil based pencil instead, which I'll touch on in a sec. The next essential tool and material in my artwork is going to be charcoal powder and a variety of brushes. I highly recommend making your own charcoal powder. What I do is I file down my own homemade charcoal powder out of General's compressed 6B charcoal sticks, and I also use a variety of different brushes in a variety of different sizes and hardness so that I can alter how much charcoal powder I apply to the page. If I'm using a little bit more of a smaller, harder brush, I can apply it a little bit more finely and accurately. And if I'm using more of a bigger makeup brush, I can apply the charcoal powder a little bit more broadly to a larger section of the page. This tool is really important because most sections of all my drawings begin with a charcoal powder foundational layer. Essentially what I try to do is use the brush and the charcoal powder to dry paint a certain area of the drawing in such a way that it captures the overall shape and the overall tonal value as accurately as possible before I ever dive in with any of the details with the pencil and the erasers. Next is the Pitt oil base pencil by Faber-Castell. This tool I first discovered when I drew Mike Tyson, and it really changed my artwork because I was able to add really dark, fine details without that graphite shine, and it's able to basically go as dark as charcoal, but I find that you're able to apply these details in a much more fine way. Like I said earlier in the video, charcoal is not really all that good for applying details, and the Pitt oil base pencil can sharpen very sharp as well. I compare it almost to a black colored pencil, but it performs almost similarly to graphite in the way that it interacts with other mediums. And the Pitt oil based pencil applies beautifully on top of charcoal powder, or charcoal pencil in general for that matter. Definitely don't try to add the Pitt oil based pencil on the page and then try to draw with charcoal on top of the Pitt oil base, because that's not going to work. You have to do the charcoal powder foundational layer first and then put some darker details on top of that with the Pitt oil based pencil. Next up is the Tombow Mono Zero Eraser. This tool is absolutely brilliant because you can erase very fine details to make highlights or to add texture to your drawing. And one thing you can do as well is use scissors to cut the tip off of the eraser to create a fresh, sharp tip so you can create the sharpest, most accurate highlights in your drawing. And a lot of the details that you create with charcoal actually comes when you erase them into the charcoal with the Tombow eraser. With graphite, you would actually create the details with the pencil itself, and you might add a little bit of details here and there with the Tombow eraser. But with charcoal, there's not a whole lot that you can do with it unless you also have the Tombow eraser to complement it. Another eraser that I use is the Faber-Castell Perfection eraser. This one I find is a lot better for very subtly subtracting layers of charcoal off of the page so that you can very subtly lighten up the value. But the Perfection eraser pencil doesn't sharpen quite as sharp, and it's not going to create those really precise white highlights that the Tombow is better at creating. But I definitely recommend using both of these tools and seeing which one works best for you depending on the context that you're using them in. Another eraser that is very good is the Kneaded eraser. This is something that you could use from day one, and it is applicable even as an advanced artist. It's very convenient because you can dab the paper and lift off layers of charcoal or graphite off the page to subtly lighten up a certain area, and you can manipulate the shape of the eraser as well to suit your needs for whatever section you're trying to work on. Something that gets highly overlooked as well is a fresh, sharp sharpener. You don't necessarily need to buy a new sharpener. I would recommend replacing the blades often. I replace the blades on my sharpener every drawing. If you notice that your charcoal pencils are breaking every time you're sharpening them, it's highly likely that your sharpener is too dull. I don't really notice my pencils breaking all that much so long as my sharpener is new and the blades are sharp. And lastly, General's Charcoal White. I find that it performs very similarly as charcoal in the sense that it doesn't apply on top of graphite or Pitt oil based pencil. It really only applies directly to the paper or on top of charcoal powder or charcoal pencil marks. One thing to look out for, however, if you're applying the charcoal white to a dark layer of charcoal powder or charcoal pencil mark, it is very likely you're going to achieve a sort of blue hue in your drawing, which ends up looking pretty ugly. So I more or less recommend using the charcoal white pencil for very fine white details. So you probably noticed that I left out tools such as blending stump, Posca acrylic paint pen, black markers, pastel pencils, charcoal sticks, electric erasers. There are a lot of tools that I left out in this video that I included in my last year's tools explained video. But the reason for that is I wanted this video to only reflect the tools that I absolutely cannot live without. If I didn't mention it in this video, I probably could go without it. Anything that I didn't mention in this video, I maybe use very occasionally for a very specific area, but it's not something that I use every drawing. So there you have it, 9 essential tools that I use that I absolutely can't live without in my artwork. So be sure to comment below, what are your favorite tools and why? And as I mentioned before, you can find these tools on my Amazon affiliate link, which I put in the description. And if you want to learn from me in greater detail and you want to support me and the channel a little bit further, be sure to check me out on Patreon, where I offer extensive HD voiceover tutorials explaining all the techniques and the concepts that I use to create my artwork. And if you want to own a signed print of any of the drawings you can see on here or any of my other social media, be sure to visit me on Etsy or at my website, fabricetheartist.com. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I hope you guys learned a thing or two. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment for the algorithm, give the video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in that next video. Peace.